My name is Caleb Rollins. I thought my uncle gave me the key to my future. Turns out, he handed me a lie wrapped in a bow. He forged my name, sold my father's land, and tried to bury the truth. But he forgot one thing: some roots grow deeper than betrayal. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that'll keep you hooked from the first word to the last. And stick around, because this isn't just a tale about land and lies. It's about betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding from the ashes. Let's get into it. My 27th birthday started like any other, quiet, simple, nothing flashy. I had the day off from the feed store. Brewed some coffee, and sat on the porch watching the fog lift off the woods. Pine Hollow doesn't do excitement, and truth be told, neither do I. But that morning, everything changed. Uncle Frank showed up around 10, driving his old Ford pickup, kicking up red dust down the long driveway. He stepped out with that same lopsided grin he always wore, part preacher, part poker player. "Happy birthday, Caleb," he said, handing me a small, creased envelope. Figured it was time. I frowned, turning the envelope over. My name was written in blue ink, slanted and neat, the way old men wrote when they still believed in handwriting. I looked up. "What is it?" "From your daddy," Frank said. "Or, more accurately, about him. I've been holding onto this for the right moment. And I reckon now's as good as any." I opened it slowly, the paper brittle like it had been folded for years. Inside were two sheets: one, a legal-looking document with the county seal and Amos Rollins's name, my daddy; the other, a handwritten letter, dated just months before the crash that took his life. The deed said the land was mine. All 100 acres of Rollins soil, stretching from the edge of the hollow to the pine ridge where the deer fed at dawn. My heart hammered. The words felt too big, too final to believe. "You're saying, this is mine?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Frank nodded, leaning on the porch post like he had all the time in the world. "Been yours since you turned 18. But there were complications. Paperwork, taxes, estate stuff. I kept it quiet, till I could make sure it was all squared away. It felt like someone had handed me the horizon. That land meant everything to Daddy. He used to say it was where the bones of the family rested. I remember riding in his truck as a boy. The two of us bouncing over roots and gravel, him pointing out the creek bend, the old tobacco shed, the place he proposed to Mama under the dogwood tree. Losing him was like losing the land too, but now, it was mine. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, walking the property line in my mind, picturing cabins nestled between the trees, a berry orchard, maybe a small retreat center. My boots itched to hit that soil. For the first time in years, I felt grounded. Like the world had stopped shifting under me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, rereading Daddy's letter over and over. He wrote about trusting me to carry the Rollins name forward. About how family land wasn't just dirt, it was legacy. I didn't know it then, but that envelope wasn't a gift, it was a trap. And Uncle Frank? He wasn't the guardian I thought he was the one who lit the fuse. I couldn't sleep that night, not from worry, but from excitement. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel stuck. I felt rooted. At first light, I grabbed my old boots and set out toward the edge of the Rollins land. The morning mist clung low, spiderwebs glistened across the tall grass, and the birds called out like they remembered me. The path past the maple grove was overgrown now, but my feet knew the way. They carried me like they had as a boy, down to the dry creek bed, past the rusted fence line, and up to the rise where the tobacco barn leaned like an old man with too many stories. I stood there, breathing it all in. The barn's roof had half collapsed, and vines had crept up the sides, but it still stood. I ran my hand along the weathered boards. I remembered helping Daddy hang up tobacco leaves here. Remembered the way his hands moved, quick, patient, sure. I could still hear him. "This land don't give much unless you love it back." I did love it. Maybe I always had. That day, I walked every inch of the property, through the hollows, across the ridge, down to the south fence where Mama used to hang laundry on sunny days. I saw not just what was there, but what could be. I took a notebook from my back pocket and started sketching, rough outlines of cabins tucked under pines, a gravel path winding toward a small lodge, maybe a greenhouse near the southern edge. It wasn't just land anymore. It was a canvas. I pictured small families escaping the noise of the world, couples sitting by fire pits, kids chasing frogs in the stream. Peace. Simplicity. A place people would come to breathe, and maybe, through that, I could breathe too. By sunset, I'd filled 5 pages with ideas. I sat on a fallen log at the highest point on the property, watching the sky turn the color of rust. That's where Daddy used to take me when life felt heavy. We'd sit side by side, him sipping coffee from a thermos, me chewing on a twig like it made me groan. He'd say, "You see this land, Caleb? Someday it'll be yours. Not 'cause you earned it, but because you belong to it." Now it was mine, or so I thought. Back at the trailer, I pinned my sketches to the kitchen wall. Each one was a promise. A future. I didn't know much about business, but I had heart. I had a shovel. I had that damn envelope in my drawer with Daddy's signature and the county seal. It felt real. Solid. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that someone had stolen that future from me before I even got the chance to claim it, and soon, I'd discover that dreams built on lies don't just collapse. They burn. Was a Wednesday afternoon when the dream cracked. I was heading back from Boone, where I'd stopped to price lumber and talk with a buddy who knew someone at the zoning office. I had plans, real ones. I was even thinking about taking out a small business loan to start building the first cabin by fall. I was lost in thought, humming along to an old Travis Tritt song, when I rounded the bend on Route 84, that's when I saw it, a massive white sign. Bold letters across the front, "Coming soon, Willow Pines Estates, luxury living in the heart of nature." At first, it didn't register. I slowed down, confused. Then I looked past the sign and saw the heavy equipment, bulldozers, dump trucks, men in hard hats walking the ridge line, my ridge line. I slammed on the brakes. Gravel spat under my tires as I pulled over and climbed out. The smell of diesel filled the air. My boots sank into the disturbed soil as I crossed the road and stood at the orange plastic fencing that cut across the place I'd dreamed of restoring. They'd leveled the dogwood tree, gone, and the tobacco barn. It was nothing but a pile of splinters and tin roofing. I stood there like a man struck dumb. My brain couldn't wrap around what I was seeing. It wasn't just the land being torn up. It was everything, my plans, my sketches, my future, torn out by the roots. A guy in a yellow vest passed by, and I called out, "Hey! What is this?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "Development. 35 homes going in by next spring. First phase." "Who sold you this land?" I asked, heart thudding. He shrugged. "You'll have to talk to the site office. We're just contractors." The trailer sat at the far end of the field, windows tinted. A woman behind the desk tapping at a computer. I asked her for the name on the deed. She pulled it up like it was nothing. "Frank Carson. Sold the property 8 years ago." I just stood there, staring. "That can't be right," I muttered. "That land was left to me. It's mine." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, sir, according to Jackson County records, it hasn't been yours for a long time." I walked out in a daze, my hands shaking. The dirt on my boots felt heavier. Like it knew, I drove straight to the courthouse. Waited 2 hours to see someone from records. And sure enough, they pulled the file. Frank Carson sold the land in 2017, signed, notarized, and filed. It was right there. In black and white. A perfectly legal transaction, except one thing, the signature on the seller line, next to my name, wasn't mine. That's when it hit me like a punch to the ribs. Uncle Frank didn't just lie to me, he stole my father's land. My legacy, and he did it with my name. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the courthouse printout, the so-called deed Frank had handed me on my birthday, and my daddy's old Bible open beside them. My hands trembled, my coffee went cold, and the more I stared at those papers, the more the truth burned through me. Uncle Frank hadn't made a mistake. This wasn't some oversight or mix-up. He had forged my name, he had sold the Rollins land 8 years ago, and he had waited until the bulldozers rolled in before handing me that envelope, his twisted gift wrapped in a lie. The betrayal felt like rot in the bones. This wasn't just about land. It was about my father's memory, my future, the bloodline he claimed to protect. And Frank had gutted it for a paycheck. The next morning, I drove back to Boone and walked into a dusty little law office above the bakery on Main Street. I'd known Eli Mercer since high school. He was quiet, sharp, and honest, a rare combination in a town where most folks chose silence over conflict. Eli flipped through the paperwork with narrowed eyes. "This deed Frank gave you?" he asked. "It's a photocopy. No official seal. Not filed with the county. And this signature," he held it up to the light. "You didn't sign this. Never even saw it before last week." Eli sat back. "Then that's a forged document. And if he used that to influence or deceive you into believing you had ownership, we're looking at fraud. Possibly more." He started pulling public records, deed transfers, tax history, bank filings. The sale of the Rollins land had been clean on paper. Frank sold it to a shell company out of Charlotte called Oak Valley Development. He'd used a power of attorney form, one supposedly signed by me in 2016, to push it through without raising eyebrows. How did no one catch this? I asked. Eli gave me a hard look. "This is Jackson County, Caleb. Paper files, rubber stamps, and a lot of handshakes. People don't dig deep unless they're told to. We found the notarized power of attorney too, complete with a notary stamp from a woman named June Holcomb. She was Frank's neighbor growing up. I remembered her from potlucks and Sunday service. She passed away 2 years ago. No one could ask her a damn thing now. The deeper we dug, the more the truth twisted. Frank had planned this, planned it down to the signature, down to the year I turned 18, he waited until no one would question the paperwork. Waited until Mama was gone and I was just drifting. Then he struck. I felt sick. Eli leaned forward. "We'll build a case. It's going to take time, but if we prove the signature's forged, and we will, you've got a shot at damages. Maybe more." Damages? No amount of money could fix this. What I wanted wasn't just justice, I wanted everything Frank stole, and I was going to make sure he felt it. Piece by piece, I didn't call ahead. Didn't send a text. I just drove. The drive to Uncle Frank's house was only 15 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime packed into one stretch of cracked pavement. My hands gripped the wheel so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. The trees blurred by, and every turn of the road twisted the fury in my gut tighter. He lived in a 2-story brick house just past the Pine Hollow post office, the kind of place that always looked like it had just been cleaned for company. Fresh mulch. Flags hanging off the porch. Bible verse stenciled over the front door like a blessing. I knocked once. He opened the door a few seconds later, wearing the same blue flannel shirt I'd seen him in since I was a kid. His face didn't even twitch when he saw me. "Well," he said, like I'd just dropped by for coffee. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I stepped inside without asking. I saw the sign on Route 84. Willow Pines Estates. And I saw the deed. The one with my name on it. He closed the door behind me slowly. No surprise. No guilt. Just that smug calm he wore like a second skin. "Ah," he said with a sigh, as if we were talking about a leaky faucet. "So you found out." I stared at him. "You forged my name, Frank. You stole Daddy's land." He waved it off. "I didn't steal anything. I kept it from wasting away." "You weren't going to do anything with it, Caleb. You were floating through life, working part-time, chasing ideas. That land would have just sat there and rotted. My chest tightened. That wasn't your decision to make. It was when your mama handed me the keys and told me to look after you. She knew you weren't ready then. I was protecting the family's future. Selling that land was the smart thing. Got top dollar. Paid off debt. Set myself up for retirement. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The way he said it, like it was just good business. Like betrayal could be justified with a bottom line. You forged my name, I said again, barely keeping my voice steady. You faked a power of attorney. You lied. For years. He shrugged. And what are you gonna do about it? Take me to court. Go ahead. But let me give you some advice. You don't win fights like this with lawyers and paper. You win them with sense. I didn't answer, I just stared at the man I once trusted like a second father and saw him clearly for the first time, a liar, a thief, and a coward hiding behind scripture and smiles. I walked out without another word, but as I stepped off his porch, I made a promise. Not out loud, not in anger, but deep down, where revenge grows roots. He thought I'd break, he had no idea I was just getting started. Frank always said the devil hides in the details. Turns out, he was right. After our confrontation, I knew dragging him into court wasn't enough. Frank wouldn't break from a courtroom or a fine, he'd just lie smoother, spin it all as some family misunderstanding. No, what Frank Carson feared was exposure. He cared about his image, his spotless name in Pine Hollow. The deacon. The good neighbor. The man who coached Little League and delivered casseroles to grieving widows. So I went digging, and in that digging, I found rot. It started with the bank statements. Eli, my lawyer, traced the land sale money, not into a single account, but scattered across several. Some in Frank's name. Some in what looked like businesses. One in the name of Lynn Atwater. That caught my attention. Lynn was the church secretary, at least officially. Younger than Frank by a couple decades, always wore tight jeans and red lipstick that made the old ladies whisper behind their hymnals. I remembered seeing her with Frank once, late at night in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Now, I knew better, so I introduced myself. It wasn't hard to find a reason. I started attending church again, just once or twice. Enough to catch Lynn's eye. We struck up conversation in the lobby. I told her I was remodeling a place near the old Rollins land and looking for someone who knew good contractors. She liked that. She liked attention. And she really liked talking. Over sweet tea one afternoon, she let it slip. Frank's been real stressed lately. I told him not to take money from both places, but you know how he is. Both places? I asked, playing dumb. She laughed nervously. Oh, just church stuff and that side business of his in Asheville. The rentals. I probably shouldn't say. But she already had. Turns out, Frank had been funneling unreported income through rental properties and cash deals. Eli dug up property records in Buncombe County, 3 houses, none declared on tax forms. The trail got dirtier from there. Then came the night Lynn called me crying. He lied to me, she said, voice shaking. I found his email. He's been seeing someone else. Some woman in Charlotte. Says he's investing her money too. I thought we had something, Caleb. I didn't comfort her. I didn't have to, all I said was, you should probably talk to his wife. And just like that, the first domino fell, because when Lynn spilled to Miriam Carson, Frank's wife of 35 years, everything came out. The secret accounts. The other woman. The land deal. The lies. I didn't lift a finger, I just stood back and watched the cracks in Frank's life split wide open. He buried the truth under layers of lies, but now, the skeletons were dragging themselves out, one dirty secret at a time. It didn't take long for everything to start caving in. Miriam found out on a Tuesday. I heard about it by Thursday. Word spreads fast in Pine Hollow, especially when it's about a man like Frank Carson. She left the house in a whirlwind, took the dog, the Buick, and half the furniture. The next day, her sister posted a cryptic Bible verse on Facebook about wickedness in sheep's clothing. Half the church knew before Sunday. By then, the whispers had turned to accusations. The deacon with the wandering hands. The mechanic with offshore accounts. The man who taught youth Bible study while lying to his own blood. Frank didn't show up for service that weekend. Neither did Lynn. They say he walked into church the following Wednesday night, tried to play it cool like nothing had happened. Sat in the third pew, nodded through the sermon, bowed his head for prayer, but no one sat near him. No one shook his hand afterward. Pastor Graham pulled him aside and asked him, kindly but firmly, not to return until things were cleared up. It was a polite exile. The kind this town delivers with a smile, but I wasn't done. That's when I made the call. Not from my phone, of course. I used Eli's office line, filed everything anonymously. Gave the IRS a package of neat, clear, damning information, documents that showed Frank's undeclared rental income, the shady shell company used in the land sale, the falsified forms he submitted during tax season. Turns out, Uncle Sam doesn't care much about family drama. But they care a lot about missing money. Within 3 weeks, Frank received a letter stamped in red. A formal audit. Investigation pending. He tried to play it cool at first, told the fellas at the diner it was just a mix-up. But when he stopped showing up for breakfast and sold his Harley, folks started connecting dots. The man who used to hand out advice like candy now walked with his shoulders low, eyes to the ground. He looked smaller somehow. Less certain. One afternoon, I saw him outside his shop, arguing on the phone with someone, maybe the IRS, maybe his lawyer. His voice was sharp, his face red. When he saw me parked across the street, he froze. I didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just watched, let him wonder how much I knew. Let him feel that cold chill of the walls closing in. He had taken everything from me, my land, my peace, my future. Now, I had taken back something of equal weight, his reputation, his power, his carefully curated illusion of control. It was all falling apart, brick by brick. Frank once told me nothing lasts forever, not land, not money, not even trust. Turns out, he was right. Only difference is, he's the one left with nothing now. I never got the Rollins land back. The court said the developers bought it in good faith. By the time the fraud was proven, they'd already poured concrete, laid roads, and sold 7 of the homes. What was once Daddy's soil was now driveways and vinyl siding. Families moved in. Kids rode bikes down what used to be the old trail between the sugar maples. I could have stayed bitter, but bitterness is a prison, and I'd already spent too long behind those bars, so I did what Daddy would have done. I found a new path. A month after the audit notice dropped into Frank's mailbox, I closed on 30 acres just west of where our family land had once sat. The borders brushed up against the same creek, and from the highest point, I could still see the old tobacco ridge, now a cluster of rooftops. It wasn't Rollins' land, but it was mine, and that meant something. There wasn't a house, not even a shack, just trees and dirt and possibility. So I started building. I bought lumber with what little savings I had left, bartered with a few local guys for tools, and taught myself what I didn't know. I spent mornings sketching floor plans, afternoons cutting and hammering, and nights lying under the stars, planning what would come next. Each swing of the hammer was therapy. Each nail I drove into the boards felt like sealing a wound shut. The first wall went up on a cold morning, my breath visible in the crisp air. I stood back, staring at it like it was a monument. It wasn't much to look at yet, but it stood, because I made it stand. As I worked, I thought about Daddy, how he used to say, if a man can build his own shelter, he can weather any storm. I'd always thought he meant literal storms. Now I knew better. He meant betrayal. Grief. Broken dreams, storms like Frank. I didn't build the cabin fast, it took time. Mistakes were made. Boards split. My hands bled more than once. But I stayed with it. Because this wasn't just shelter. It was justice. My kind. Quiet, Patient, permanent. One evening, after the windows were in and the roof was halfway done, I sat on the porch frame and watched the sun dip behind the tree line. I could hear the distant hum of traffic from Route 84, the laughter of kids playing in willow pines, and I didn't feel angry anymore, not because I forgave Frank. I hadn't, but because he no longer owned a single piece of me, not my land. Not my name. Not my future. He built his life on stolen foundations, I was building mine from the ground up, with clean hands, an honest name, and a soul that could sleep at night. This cabin, this place, I called it justice, and I was finally home. You can tell a lot about a man by how people look at him when he walks into the Pine Hollow diner. For most of my life, when I came through that door, folks barely glanced up. Maybe a nod from Miss Edith behind the counter or a polite morning from someone sipping sweet tea in a booth. But mostly, I was just Amos Rollins's quiet son, the kid who never really left town but never really fit either. But not that morning. When I stepped inside, the place went still for a second. Heads turned. Eyes met mine. And then, slowly, nods. Honest ones. A few smiles. Miss Edith poured my coffee without asking and said, "Good to see you, Caleb." They all knew, everyone in Pine Hollow had heard by now. About Frank. The forged papers. The fake inheritance. The hidden money. The affairs. The IRS. The court filings. The auction of his assets that was set for next month. And they knew I had stood through it, not with fists or screaming, but with truth. With patience. With grit. Frank, once the untouchable man of the town, had become its cautionary tale. The deacon who preached about hard work while pocketing stolen dreams. His name was spoken in hushed tones now, and folks crossed the street to avoid him. He still lived in town, last I heard, alone in a rental house near the lumberyard, his reputation gutted, his accounts frozen. I hadn't seen him in weeks. Didn't care to. He'd gotten his reckoning, but I hadn't done it for revenge. Not really. I did it so I could breathe again. So I could stop carrying the weight of a man's lies on my back. So I could build something honest, something that no one could take from me. As I sat down at the counter, a man named Ray Fletcher slid onto the stool beside me. He'd been one of Frank's biggest supporters back in the day. Served on the church board. Always walked with Frank at the farmer's market like they were royalty. Ray cleared his throat. "Caleb," he said, not meeting my eyes at first. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong. We all were. About him. About you." I nodded. "It's all right." "No," he said. "It ain't. But I hope you'll accept the respect now that we should have given you then." I didn't say anything. Just nodded again. That was enough. That afternoon, I drove back to my land. To the cabin I built with calloused hands and clean conscience. I stood on the porch and watched the wind bend through the pines, watched the creek sparkle in the sun. Justice had been served. Not with fire. Not with fists. But with truth, and in a town like Pine Hollow, truth travels slow, but it sticks harder than lies. Frank had tried to bury me, but I didn't just survive, I rose. If this story struck a nerve or kept you listening until the end, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful true-to-life tales, and drop a comment below. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? Your voice matters, and we'd love to hear your story.